When an agent tells me like what their rental expectations are, I multiply it by 0.7. Take 70% of what they say.
When you go see a new project, they give you a brochure with like the return on investment before they even give you a price list. They're telling you like how much you could rent.
A lot of agents don't even know how to calculate ROI.
Everyone thinks like, oh, I can manage a property. What do I have to do? Just like have it clean, ready, and that's it. It can be pretty tough.
Short-term rentals are a headache.
Okay, so hi everyone, welcome back. We're here in Casa Juan Miguel, or John Michael's house for English speakers. It's gonna be hard to concentrate on
for the gringos.
Yeah,
we got a nice ocean
because
view.
it's just so great. I wish it was for sale.
It is.
Okay.
Price drop 3.3. Reach out.
Okay, the
Shameless plug is over. So.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about the bread and butter of investors in Cabo. Rentals, short-term rentals, long-term rentals.
I have a lot of people here that buy investment properties. You know, I can think of a lot of buyers. They're basically, it's like, hey, almost like a diversification out of the stock market.
Mm-hmm.
And then also they can use this, the family can use it, or a lot of people buy here because let's say they're in California and they're looking around Los Angeles, and the property that they bought, in 2012 as a rental property, if they try to buy it now, it would be $800,000, and the HOA fees, the insurance, all this stuff just adds up. And then they look to an area like Cabo that they've been vacationing, and they're like, hey, I can buy like the same thing here for like $400,000. Why wouldn't I? So you see a lot of people that buy here and they're using it as a rental property to offset, when they're not here.
Yeah.
But I see a lot of people peddling, kind of absurd ROIs.
Yeah.
I know you work with a group from property management, so you have a good perspective of this as well, but just giving people a realistic expectation for if you're buying in Cabo and you want rental income, whether that's long-term or short-term, what to expect.
Yeah, and it's definitely growing. When you go see a new project, they give you a brochure with like the return on investment before they even give you a price list. They're telling you like how much you could rent. It's these projects that even from the way they're designed, you can tell that they're aiming at being for vacation rentals.
Los Cabos has the highest ADR, average daily rate for hotels in Mexico. And if you dropped it in the US, it would probably be like the third highest.
Yeah.
So we're talking $450 a night on average, essentially for hotels, which is kind of crazy. But you think about all like the really ridiculous, like Chileno Bay, all these places.
Yeah.
They're building more because they stay full.
Yeah.
So like, why would you stay in a resort when you can stay like an Airbnb and go hang out in town? That's what I would, and I'm the type of traveler that would like to do that. I don't want to stay in the all-inclusive. I want to go out and explore. So like Airbnb is perfect. There's definitely been, let's say from 2021, like the boom, there's been a saturation within a particular market segment. Talk about that. But also people are talking about ROIs that are just, they're copy and pasting the same description from and that wasn't even right. There's an agent who broadcasts 15% ROI, and this is on like rentals, right? So we're not talking about appreciation. And I emailed them and I was like, hey, can you break that down for me? And of course there was no response, right? You got taxes, you got property management, insurance, HOA, you got maintenance, dude. You might need to call the plumber, AC. Long distance landlording is not for everyone too.
Yeah.
Who's running it? Is it furnished? But all these things add up. I have a good client from Sacramento, and he's in industrial real estate in California. He got a 3-bedroom, and like this guy literally sent me an Excel sheet of his rental income based upon that. When he's not using it, right? And it came out to a little over 5%. You know, and he's doing everything right. You know, he's paying his taxes, he's got insurance, he's doing this. So when these people peddle 15%, you know, it's not like the tooth fairy comes and takes away your property taxes, your, you know, your rental income taxes, you know, your property management fees, your HOA. And we've seen this, Pedro, like I've heard people say like 35%, you know, and it's like, they just don't necessarily understand, you know, and if you listen to them, they might say, oh, well, he bought this for $300,000. I'm like, dude, that's not the same thing. You're factoring in appreciation. Like you're just peddling something. But here's the thing. A lot of agents don't even know how to calculate ROI. Yeah. They're not calculating the expenses, which, like I said, the tooth fairy doesn't come in and take that away.
It's not the fact that like it's not a good investment. Like if you go somewhere and the development gives you the brochure with a return on investment, maybe get a second opinion, they might not be like that far off. That's one thing. The other thing is, if you are going to buy somewhere, you know, it's guaranteed that it's a good place for like vacation rentals. A lot of people are probably buying there, which means you have competition, but it means you're going to have to like have your shit together, you know? For example, sometimes people will buy a unit and they're like, okay, well, I already spent a lot of money on that unit. So the furniture, I don't want to spend a lot of money. An interior designer told me, lo barato sale caro. You know, if you don't invest in the furniture.
Yeah, if you don't invest in the furniture, like, but I don't know that many people, like, I'm not going to refer you to people. Yeah,
there's a difference between a client that it's their first rental property. And then there's people that have like, I have 5 here, 10 there, and it's whatever. But some people like are really depending on that income, and they start planning. So they get this brochure that says, I'm going to make this amount a year. And they start planning, okay, so in 2 years, I'm going to get another one. Then I'm going to get 2. And then I'm going to move over here. Then I'm going to buy a horse. And then, you know.
Yeah.
So that's why it's important, like from the start, to manage expectations.
General, just rule of thumb, when an agent tells me like what their rental expectations are, I multiply it by 0.7. And I'll take, you know, so I take 70% of what they say. That's just a general. Matter of fact, I was on tour like 3 months ago, and the guy gave, and I was like, guy actually told the truth. Like, he wasn't like overly optimistic. And you've heard me say this, you want to under promise and over deliver.
Yeah, I would.
But most people here are going to over promise and under deliver, and then the client's just pissed off. I wouldn't necessarily listen to most agents on that, just because one, they don't really even know how to calculate it. I have a background in commercial real estate and investing, so like I understand that to a certain extent. And two, they're just kind of peddling things.
Yeah.
Another thing that you mentioned was the saturation. If we're looking, for example, in like Tezal, first of all, there's a lot of 2-bedroom, 2-baths. You know, that was kind of like what was sold.
Yeah, that was that bread.
But I think especially in the like 300, let's say that when they bought, you know, so like 350 to like 600 range, you're getting a lot of saturation. A lot of those people, you know, that were expecting rental income, you know, for short-term rentals, and a lot of people choose short-term because they want to use the unit themselves, right? Yeah. So you can't long-term. What I think you're going to see happen is, I think like as that competition eats into rental income, you're going to see one of two things. A lot of those people are going to put that on the long-term market, and there is a good long-term market here. That's what we do. Or they're just going to be like, hey, this isn't what I thought it was, and they're going to sell.
Yeah. Which is another thing about like, have you ever gone to see a property and you, as soon as you walk in, you know that it's an Airbnb? They don't want to buy anything too expensive, and there's a beach.
No, and it's like, it'll be like half furnished, you know, and it's kind of like really low budget furniture. So you can walk into a unit, and that's without even seeing like any wear or tear, you know, but you can definitely tell that, you know, like I'll go into, you know, people go see this property. And the first thing I told this guy last week, I was like, hey, it is furnished, but, you know, let's call it like maybe half furnished, because it has like a bed, it has like this, but it really needs a lot. And on top of it, if you wanted to live there, you'd be buying all new stuff.
It would be like a hotel where all the hotel rooms are competing against each other. I think that sometimes the deciding factor is when they see the return on investment. You know, they get excited like, oh my God, I can make this much.
Yeah, no.
They start doing numbers in their head, and they start planning. And like you said, I would rather them be surprised by how much they got than to make decisions based on another.
Yeah,
that
and a lot of them too are, making sure there's very few developments here, especially within the range we just discussed, that have any sort of parameters or regulations that you got to use a specific company.
Yeah.
But like, I know I got a client that owns in the Cape, and when you start going to these hotel properties and they make you use their own hotel residence, at the end of the day, the Cape is basically taking like probably 45% to, close to almost 50% of your rental income. And that thing's like rented out like all the time and it's making money. But let's just say at the end of the month, you've got, 20,000 in rental income, and that's beachfront, right? Mm-hmm. You're probably going to get maybe 10,000 of that, when you factor in taxes and what the hotel is charging you. And these are the types of places that will like replace furniture. You what I mean? So,
or then sometimes they see how much like property management costs and they're like, okay, I'll do it myself from wherever they're from. And turns out it's not as easy as they think.
Short-term rentals are a headache. There's really zero barriers to entry for property. When I first got here, I was handing out like magnets and Walmart parking lot for property management. Like you don't need to have a license. You just need to really get clients, right? And then I realized like, hey, that's like a very hard business, very hard to scale. So I do outsource that to people that I trust. And I've had situations where I've outsourced that to people, and like I've gotten a phone call and been like, hey, I just want to let you know, like you seem like a very honest guy. We had a quick conversation, like 10 minutes, and you referred me to this person and they're not really coming through. And I figured you should know that because you don't seem like the type of guy that should be referring bad people to do property management. So long distance landlording is not for everyone.
No, it's becoming much more competitive because everyone thinks like, oh, I can manage a property. What do I have to do? Just like have it clean, ready, and that's it. I worked in property management for a bit. Right now I'm working with another property management agency, and it can be pretty tough.
This property right here is gorgeous. That's not really factoring into, but once you get up to like a certain level, I think when people stay in property management long enough, they just kind of realize they got to level up and get to like higher, stay per night, dollar per night, because it just works better. But I think it's very important to have a very realistic expectation on property management, on what you're going to be getting for rental income. Because like you said, a lot of people do base their projections and what they're going to make and how they're going to hold the property. There's also
seasonal.
There's a lot of people too that they'll rent it out just to kind of cover the costs, and that's a whole nother thing. So it's like, hey, you buy, you're comfortable, the property is appreciating, you're not really paying anything for it, and you're using the property a week to a month out of the year. You can come down when you want, you block that off. There's that camp, and like, hey, like that is acceptable. But when somebody is buying strictly for investment, you just have to be careful because, 35%, 25%, if somebody was asking me ROI return right now, I'd say 5 to 7%. And look, that's just a general, like once you get into the property, you can get something that's a little bit more accurate depending on what it is. And then like, hey, would you be comfortable switching to a long-term rental? Is that something that's in the cards, or is that absolutely not in the cards? I think there's a lot of questions that you should be asking yourself when you're buying here, but there's definitely a saturation. Cabo's growing, it'll continue to grow. So as long as you have realistic expectations, I think you're not going to lose. You just have to be, transparent and honest and really understand what the projections are. So if you're buying for investment, there's a lot of opportunity here, especially in appreciation. This wasn't really about appreciation, the price going up. But for rental income, you're definitely starting to see a saturation. And look, this is different. If you go to San Jose, you go to San Lucas, these are different markets. So it depends. But you should definitely reach out to somebody that knows how to do this and can give you a clear picture on what you're going to be actually like taking home.
Before making any decisions, having a clear picture of of what it's going to look like.
If you have any interest in rental properties and you just want an honest valuation or know which properties are good for rental income, feel free to reach out.
And if you want to know more about Casa Juan Miguel too, wow, it's crazy. I wish I could show it to everyone.
No, it's a good one. We're going to do the ocean view, but it doesn't really show with the sunlight right now. So anyway,
yeah,
reach out, Pedro at CaboRealEstate.com, Fletcher at ReMexico.com. Shoot us a message. Let us know what video you want to see next.
Thank you, guys. See you.